So, as community college students, I'm sure we are all aware of the pressures to stay in school in order to work towards a career, and the temptation to put school on the back burner in order to get a job. As we all know, paying tuition puts a big hole in your wallet, but at the same time, avoiding bills and failing to earn a degree can be costly later on in life. I'm not trying to discredit the dilemma or brush it off as no big deal, but I do believe that our thoughts are so consumed by it that we take the stability of the U.S. for granted. Compared to those of other countries, our education system and our economy are actually very reliable. Today, I would like to describe for you the hardships of students and workers in the Philippines. In the Philippines, many people are caught in the cycle of poverty that has its hold on the nation. The factors crippling the Filipino people are issues that we are all familiar with here in the U.S. Throughout the course of my speech, I'm going to be talking about the costs of schooling, unskilled labor, and underemployment in the Philippines. Okay. So most of us probably went to public school, so tuition didn't become an issue until we got into college. But in the Philippines, tuition is usually an issue from the beginning of your education. Many of my relatives in the Philippines live comfortable lives, but are by no means well off. This is why I was a little confused when I was talking to them and I found out that they were actually going to private schools. I always wondered why not save money by enrolling in public schools. Well, it turns out that in order to get a good education in the Philippines, you have to go to a private school. There are public schools, but they are generally for the underprivileged. And according to a country study done by the Federal Research Division of the Library of Congress, public elementary schools in the Philippines often pass students regardless of performance or achievement. So the standards for public and private schools are very different, and unfortunately so are the costs. The stress of tuition is something that people in the Philippines have to deal with their whole lives. Which brings me to my next point. Because school is so expensive, many people drop out and choose to work instead. In an article in the Manila Times, the Philippines Senator Antonio Trillanes stated that for every 100 who enter grade 1, only 43 will finish high school and only 14 will actually finish college. I was in the Philippines last summer, and while I was there, I got the chance to speak with Sel Tan, the president of the Asian Institute of E-Commerce, or AIE College, in the Philippines. During our conversation, she told me about dropouts and how much of a problem it is. Part of what she told me was that when people drop out, they usually end up doing unskilled labor in order to support themselves and their families. She told me that one of the most popular careers that people defaulted to was that of a tricycle driver. So these are tricycles. A tricycle is basically a motorcycle with a little passenger car attached, and they use them to taxi people around, and they're one of the main sources of transportation, public transportation in the Philippines. And the minimum rate for these is about 20 pesos, which equals about 50 cents. While they are a popular form of transportation, they are beginning to overpopulate the streets, as you can see. As you can see from this chart, according to the National Statistical Coordination Board, there are 6,220,433 registered motor vehicles in the Philippines, and motorcycles and tricycles account for 2,982,296 of them. This means that almost half of the registered vehicles in the Philippines are tricycles. The scary thing is that this number will only keep growing. As people drop out of school, more tricycles will be added to the streets. And more tricycles in the streets means more people to share customers with, and less income. Lastly, sticking it out and staying in school does not necessarily secure a career for you either. Much like the circumstances here in the States, having a degree in the Philippines does not guarantee a desirable job. Oftentimes, the jobs that people get after they graduate are not worthwhile. According to the National Statistics Office of the Philippines, 20.9% of the workforce is said to be underemployed. This means that over 1/5 of workers are not being used to their full potential. It also means that people that decided to go to school and worked hard to graduate were not rewarded with as big of a shot at mobility as they had hoped. Most businesses do not hire high school students in the Philippines. So in order to qualify for jobs that we consider to be entry-level positions, you have to be a college graduate. In fact, in order to work at a big fast food chain like McDonald's, you have to have a college degree. And I actually went on the McDonald's Philippines site and tried to apply for a job. And as you can see, the minimum requirement is a graduate. So I decided to speak about this topic because poverty is very rampant in the Philippines. And during my last trip, I couldn't help but think about why it was such an issue. And from what I gather, it seems like one vicious cycle. People have to pay for a decent education, and if they can't or won't, then they spend the rest of their lives trying to get by. And if the people that do finish school work their way up, only to reach a new bottom. And I guess I wanted to share this because these are kind of the same struggles that we're all going through, most likely, and hopefully you guys just have a more holistic worldview, I guess, that we're not the only ones dealing with these things in the world. So, thanks.
Talib, what did you think? Not here, huh? Okay.
Do you want someone else to speak?
It gets a little confusing trading them around. Let me see if I've got somebody else that I can jump on that I know is not going to be here today.
I can do it. I'm the one that wrote the written.
Well, I tell you what. I don't see David, who's supposed to speak today.
Oh, which David?
David McBennis. And I do see Taylor. So Taylor, why don't you tell us what you thought of DJ's speech, and we'll just kind of move you around, and then maybe Talib can do David when he comes back.
I thought it was interesting, and you provided a lot of good information. Your thesis was well spoken. It was about I knew from the beginning what it was about, and the importance of, and the information about the importance of going to college. I liked how you showed, I like how you gave that example about the students and the people in the Philippines that they don't go to school and then they have to do like an unskilled labor job. I thought that was relevant, because it shows how what can happen to us. Like if we quit going to school, we can just work at McDonald's or something. So that was cool, and I liked your source that you used of the president in the Philippines. Like, I thought that was like a credible source. And then, yeah, it was good. Like, your visuals were good. You showed the tricycles, and you talked about like how the number of tricycle drivers are increasing, and there's not going to be as much customers, or there's going to be not as much customers for the workers. I thought that was cool. But yeah, it was a good speech.
All right. I like the unifying statement in the introduction. I thought that was pretty effective. I thought you had a very clear statement of what your goal was for the speech, and a very solid layout of what the structure of the speech is going to be as you're getting into it. I thought that was solid. I'd agree with Taylor about the source citations. I thought that you did a good job citing the local newspapers there in the Philippines. You had the state senator that you talked to. You had that person that you interviewed when you were there. I like the fact that you found some local sources of information in the Philippines to utilize in talking about that. I thought that was integrated nicely into the speech, and you did a good job citing that. Most of your explanations are pretty good. I think there's a couple of statistical things that jump out. You mentioned 20% being underemployed, and you've got that one screenshot of the application process for a job in the Philippines at McDonald's. Minimum requirement. Well, if 20% are underemployed, that suggests that there is a chunk of people who are employed at reasonable levels, and so it makes it seem like there aren't opportunities in the Philippines. I think I can see where you're saying people kind of fall into this other trap about driving the tricycles, for instance, but I needed a little bit bigger picture on this. You had the 6 million plus vehicles approximately that are registered in the Philippines, half of which, almost 3 million, are the tricycles. The first thing that popped in my head is, and I'm sorry that I don't know this because my geography is not perfect, what's the population of the Philippines? How many people are we talking about there, so I could see, if the population of the Philippines is 60 million people and 3 million of them are driving the tricycles, well, that does sound like a big chunk, but it's not that big a chunk. On the other hand, if the population of the Philippines is 10 million people and 3 million of them are making their living driving the tricycles, I'm saying, okay, then I can see that this is a real issue here that's going on, that everybody's kind of been, it's still a good job, I suppose, but ghettoized into this kind of employment because there aren't these other opportunities. And I don't really get much context for the Philippines. I think you do a good job talking about the education system and the way it fails some people. I'm just not sure if that's descriptive of the whole education system and the whole culture that's going on there. And I think that's the thing that was missing for me in the speech. I thought that the images that you showed were pretty good. They were integrated pretty nicely into the speech. You had a little bit of a problem at one point, but I like the fact that you handled it in a very calm, deliberative manner. I'm going to walk over here, I'm going to fix the problem, I'm just going to show the picture. Good for you. I'd be raving, I'd be screaming about stuff. Irritated with myself that I didn't check it ahead of time, but you handled it exceptionally well. I like that. I think that that's a good way to deal with those kinds of problems. So in this particular case, do as I suggest and not as I do. Do what you did instead. I do think that your delivery is, there's some advantages to the way you're delivering the speech. Like I said, it sounds like you were deliberative and thoughtful about the process. You're very calm in the way you're speaking. On the other hand, I think I'd like a little bit more energy and emotional variability in the way you're talking. We're going to talk about this more in the next go-round because that's one of the things we're going to focus on, is the range in your voice. And I think everything in your voice is, the range both in the inflection and delivery is very narrow. And I think you need to use a little bit wider range to get some more intensity into the presentation. But that's a minor quibble at this point. All right. Thank you.